before we had that, wanted to go back to our teams, and I realized I didn't get to my number 6 team, which is it's actually the 2012 team. And I agree with you, Day 1K. We do have a lot to prove, but the 2012 team is my number 6 here. They went undefeated, and that was the season that they weren't able to play for a national championship because of the tattoo scandal. And the reason why they are only number 6 is because while I do think they would have beaten that Notre Dame team that played for a national championship, like that's who they would have been playing. They wouldn't have been playing Alabama for that national championship. They would have been playing Notre Dame. The offense was Braxton Miller run right, Braxton Miller run left. Like even then, it wasn't as bad as the 2011 team as far as, that offense goes, but they didn't really have a dynamic offense that could really truly be relied upon. And quite honestly, their schedule that year was weak. They played 3 teams in the top 25 and no one was ranked higher than 20th when they played them. They played Michigan State at number 20, Michigan State. They won the game by 1 point. They played Nebraska, who was, a fraud. They were 21st. We beat the crap out of them, 63-38. And then the final game of the year was Michigan. Michigan was ranked 20th, and Ohio State won 26-21. So they didn't play a top 10 or top 5 team or anything like that. Yeah, they went undefeated. I would have loved to have seen what they did against Notre Dame, because if they beat Notre Dame, then they're in the conversation being one of the best teams of all time. But they didn't get that chance. So that's why they're so low on my list.
Well, they didn't make my list.
Okay. But interesting. Undefeated team did not make their list. All right.
I didn't have them there because of what you said about the offense. That's strictly why.
Okay.
And a lot. And I thought a lot of those. I thought that though they went undefeated, I thought the Big Ten was dog shit that season.
Okay.
But I do believe they would have won a national championship.
Yep.
Without a doubt. And honestly, maybe if they were able to play for it and won it, I would have probably thought differently. I probably would have had them number.
That would have been in the top 3 for sure for me.
So at number 5.
Yeah. So you're number 5. What do we got?
2020.
Okay. They actually did not make my list.
Yeah, it was hard for me to put them on this list, but when I just kind of talked myself into it, I just thought, do I think any of those teams I named before them could beat that team? Hell no. I thought that team was just, I think what people forget about that team is this. They weren't able to practice before the season started. They jumped in. They have a few weeks before the season started to practice and had to jump right into it. You won your games. And it was, of course, it was a goofy season. You won your conference, and I can care less what anyone thinks about how it happened. We did it. I mean, people act like it's not like it has to happen before. People forget way back, everyone before your parents are born, there was a time when Michigan beat Ohio State, quarterback got injured, the Big Ten sent Ohio State to the Rose Bowl. So, hey, things like that happen. I thought that, Justin Fields, one of the top 2 Ohio State quarterback all time in my eyes. Trey Sermon at the end of that year, I all season I was crying for him to start because I don't understand how you could justify having splitting carries at him and Master Teague. I just couldn't quantify. The defense was really good that season. They go into the game against Clemson and completely depants them. Completely. One day we got to have a conversation about Ryan Day and his ability to just trash teams in the playoffs. Well, it has to be a conversation one day. But that's who I have at number 5.
So the reason I didn't have them on my list, it was a coin flip between them and 2003 for the number 10 spot, is because they only played 5 regular season games. We didn't get to see their full body of work. And really, I mean, in the playoff, like the Pac-12 was completely taken out of a shot to even really make the playoff. And then they got absolutely smoked by Alabama in that national championship game. I understand Trey Sermon got hurt early in that game, but that shouldn't have mattered that much. Their defense, I mean, Devontae Smith had more receiving yards than Ohio State had total yards in the first half. That's how bad it was.
I think that it's funny, but I think people don't forget how actually that game was closer than a lot of people think it was. In the fourth quarter, the fourth quarter, the game was not out of hand. It was still a 2-score game.
But Alabama was clearly in firm control. Like they, at no point did I ever think Ohio State was going to.
No. Hear me out. Based on what I saw in the fourth quarter and how the game wasn't out of control, I do believe if Trey Sermon wasn't injured, I do believe if Justin Fields didn't go in that game with cracked ribs, the game would look different. I'm not saying we would have won. I mean, it doesn't help when you have linebackers covering Devontae Smith. But I think that game could have gone. It could have been much better than that. I think that team was.
The main issue with that was the defensive line couldn't get any block. Like Alabama's offensive line was ridiculously good that year.
And that's one
Mike
of
Jones.
And that's one of the best offenses of all time.
Yeah. So that was your number 5. My number 5 is actually the team we just saw, the 2024 national champions. They're number 5 on my list, and the reason is quite simple. Before their 4-game run, we thought Ryan Day was going to get fired and run out of town because everyone thought they were going to lose to Tennessee in the first round of the playoffs.
Don't say we.
Okay, most people also thought that if they were going to beat Tennessee, they were going to lose to Oregon, and their season was going to be over. So Michigan lost is still as bad as that's still indefensible. Like there's no reason they should have lost to that team. And the first Oregon loss is defensible. That was a 1-point loss on the road to a good team. But this is still a 2-loss team. And I know they won a national championship, but a 2-loss national championship team just can't be higher than some of the other teams I have on this list. So that's why they're 5. Who do you got number 4?
We're going to get back to that in a little bit here. At number 4, 2006.
Okay.
That team, we're talking Troy. I mean, you named everybody earlier.
Yeah. Really talented team.
Yeah, I thought that was I would call that the first. What we see today, how we see Ohio State football today, I think that was the start of it, the blueprint for what we see today in terms of offense and how we run. You look at that backfield, Beanie Wells, Antonio Pittman, two of the most historic. Both of them had historic touchdowns against Michigan. Beanie was a freshman that season, I believe.
Yep, true freshman.
Yeah, well, he had that. Got the ball, spun off the first guy, and then just trampled on. Man, it was that was beautiful. Ted Ginn Jr., who I believe if he were to play in today's system at Ohio State, I don't know what he would look like in that, except for perfection.
Yeah.
And people forget me. Ted Ginn Jr. Had Olympic track speed. You forget that he was on a
track star.
Yeah, one of his. He was a second leg. No, he was the. Well, he was on the same 4x4 team with Usain Bolt. A lot of people don't know that. But I think that team was just great. I understand. The Florida game is what it is. It sucked.
That's one of my favorite teams of all time.
Yeah,
for sure.
And I think. I'm happy you said that. I think I have them up there because they're one of my favorite teams. You look back on that season, I still believe that was the greatest college football game in history because of the programs that were in it and how the game went down.
I was at that game. Yeah.
Oh, man. You just remember, in that, when Ohio State goes up 21-7, in my mind, I'm like, we're about to beat the brakes off this team. And, they come back. People forget, that Michigan team, you're talking Chad Henne, Jake Long, Mike Hart, Sean Crable,
Mario Manningham,
Brandon Graham, Steve Breston.
Yeah.
The second best return man in Big Ten history behind Ted. There was a lot of star power on that team.
Yeah. Sean Crable. Yeah.
And then you get to the end of the game, and what's the game without some controversy? You got Sean Crable being a complete idiot, hitting Troy Smith at the end that basically got us to win. But I have that 06 team at number 4. Who you got?
Yeah. So number 4, I have the 2002 team. and I know you had them at number 10. And
no,
that's why
number eight.
Sorry, but look, that 2002 team, like the wins were not pretty, but here are some of the wins they had. They beat 5 top 25 teams. They beat number 10 Washington State. They actually won that game by double digits, 25-7. They beat number 17 Penn State. That was the game Chris Gamble had the pick 6 to really give them the lead. They won that game 13-7, even though they didn't score an offensive touchdown. They beat Minnesota the next week, number 23 Minnesota. They won that game 34-3. That game wasn't close. And then they took down number 9 Michigan. As we all know, 14-9. Will Allen had that pick to seal it up. And then to beat the number 1 team in Miami, who was the defending national champions, who had lost in 2 years. So you go undefeated, you win the national championship, you beat what many consider to be the best college football team of all time up to that point. You get some mad respect in my book. Now, total talent-wise, they're not as talented as some of the teams that I have ahead of them on this list, but results-wise, it's really hard to argue with an undefeated season beating 5 top 10 or 5 top 25 teams.
Yeah. Without a doubt, I do believe that to be the greatest Ohio State team of all time.
Okay.
Because of what they did. You look back at that Miami team, they could play today.
Yeah, they were really good.
They could play today. They would be a top 10 team, top 5 team probably. So
yeah. Who do you got at number 3?
Number 3, I have the 2014 national champions.
I also have the 2014 team at number 3.
All right, cool. So we can have a good conversation
This
about
is
this.
the first one we've agreed on.
Yeah, there we go, man. I'm happy. I'm going to assume, well, no, okay, not yet.
But yeah, we'll talk about that.
That 2014 team, magical. Yeah. Magical. Now, I do want to point to the fact that you brought up an embarrassing loss to Michigan. This team had an embarrassing loss, but I just look at that, man, what Ezekiel Elliott did in that 4-game stretch. I'll count the Michigan, that 4-game stretch.
Okay.
I think that is, in terms of the college football playoff so far, that is the greatest performance in playoff history. I don't think it's close. I think that the fact that we could just give him the ball and expect him to, what was he averaging? Over 7 a carry? Almost 8?
Something like that.
It was ridiculous. That defense was really good, man. You look at guys like I'm blanking on Michael Thomas, awesome player. Shout out to Spencer. He was actually Evan Spencer was my roommate in 4th grade at the Ohio State football camp. Fun
nice.
fact. Yeah, didn't know he's going to grow up to do that.
Devin Smith's one of the greatest deep ball catchers ever.
He's, in terms of Ohio State, he's second behind Tegan Jr. in my eyes. That was I think that season he was averaging 21 a catch.
I don't know what his yards per catch was, but it was high.
It was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. And it's really sad that I remember he came to the Cowboys, and I was so happy. Injuries. Yeah. But yeah, that what that team did that season is to be remembered. So yeah.
I echo everything you said. The 2014 team was really talented. That Virginia Tech loss, I chalk that up to it was JT Barrett's first start at home against a halfway decent team. The offensive line wasn't the offensive line at that point. They allowed 7 sacks in that game. The turnovers, the pick 6 is really kind of what did them in. They obviously improved every other game after that. The defense really came together. To win a national championship with your 3rd-string quarterback is insane. What they were able to do, Joey Bosa, Michael Bennett, that defensive line was absurd. Tyquan Lewis. It was just a really solid team, front to back. Malik Hooker was young. He was, didn't play a whole lot, but he was on that team. They had Jordan Fuller. Again, they had a lot of really good players in the secondary.
A lot of talent.
Raekwon McMillan, he was at the height of his powers in that season. linebacker.
Underrated linebacker in Ohio State history. Underrated.
Yeah. It was just a really good team. And it was nice to see them finish off with a national title. Who's your number 2 team?
Oh, by the way, just another little fun fact for everybody. That class, what they were sold on from Urban Meyer was that you get a chance to beat Alabama. They were a lot of those guys from the South were sold on that, and they made it happen. So shout out to them. At number 2, I got 24. I got this past season. Okay. Yeah, the Oregon loss, I can excuse that. The Teton loss, I can't excuse that. But again, we did our list a little different, and I'm guessing we both had the same team at number 1.
I think so. We've talked about it before.
Yeah. But anyone else, I don't think there's outside of the team I know we have at number 1. No one is reaching that peak. I think that the peak that team could reach is insane.
This team had a really high peak. The reason why I had them 5th as opposed to higher is they didn't play to their peak when they needed to the most. In the game, to only score 10 points is a complete failure. And to turn around and end up winning a national championship out of that is it's insane. It's crazy. That 4-game run might go down as as the best 4-game run ever. But the season as a whole is more than just those 4 games, and I have to take into account everything else that happened. So it's still a really good team. Don't get me wrong. My number 2.
Also, just saying, like you think about everything that went into this. Like, everyone's talking about the money you spend. Everyone's talking about Ryan Day. Everyone's talking about. I mean, people are wondering if Jack Sawyer and JTT can actually play at elite level. Everyone's asking if Will Howard can actually lead this team to a national championship. People are wondering how the running backs are going to do. Is Judkins going to want to split the ball because they think he has character issues? Everyone's wondering, is Jeremiah Smith really that good? Newsflash, everybody. He's the best fucking player in college football. It's that's probably my second favorite, like in terms of just who I love. Probably my second. Yeah.
Cool.
And then number 1, baby.
Hold on. My number 2. I got to get to my number 2.
Oh yeah. Oh, you didn't say it. Yeah, let's hear this.
My number 2 is the 2015 team. We just talked about how good the 2014 team was. That team was a year that team was ahead of schedule. That team was a year early. Almost every single one of those contributors came back for that 2015 team, and they were supposed to be better. They still had Zeke. They still had their entire defense back. Like, they still had Bosa. They still had Tyquan Lewis. They still had McMillan. Like, they had all of these really good players on both sides of the ball. And Tim Beck and Ed Warner screwed it up in that Michigan State game by not giving Zeke the ball when it was a rainy, misty, cold, gross shit storm. I was at that game. The fans, that was the last game I attended as a college student. And it was very frustrating to watch, to sit there in the stands and watch this team go down the drain, losing to a backup quarterback for Michigan State. But they were one of the most talented teams I've ever seen. And we saw that when they led the smackdown against Michigan and Notre Dame in the final 2 games of the season. Like, that team was really talented. I think the way Urban handled the Cardale and JT Barrett starting quarterback mess, it was exactly that. It was a mess. He should have started JT from the start. Braxton Miller, I thought he should have been more involved as the H-back later on in the year. He kind of fell to the wayside. But they still had so many good weapons on that team, and they just weren't able to get that Michigan State game. I truly believe if they beat Michigan State, I think they'd repeat as national champions. That's how good of a team I thought they were. It's just a shame and that's what finally ran Tim Beck out of town. And good riddance.
Yeah. I know we disagree on this, but I stand 10 toes down on this. I don't care what happened that year before. Braxton Miller should have been the quarterback.
He couldn't throw. That's the problem. That's why they moved him to H-back. Like, his shoulder, he physically couldn't throw anymore.
I'm telling you, I don't care.
Well, come on. Your number 1 team, I'm pretty sure, is the same number 1 team I have. So go ahead and reveal it.
that 2019 Ohio State.
That 2019 team.
You know, that loss to Clemson is what it is. We got robbed. I try to stay away from that. I always say, no, don't give the officials a chance to call the game for you when they call the game for you. But it's a little bit different when you see a guy take 3 steps, fumble the ball, and you take it back for a touchdown. So
and that terrible targeting call against Sean Wade too. Don't forget about that. That changed the whole complexion of the game, and they ended up scoring a touchdown on that drive, as opposed to going, instead of fumbling the ball or punt. It was a mess. And J.K. Dobbins got hurt in that game too. He sprained his ankle. If he doesn't sprain his ankle, he scores on that breakaway touchdown. He also dropped a touchdown pass. If he doesn't do that,
I thought he dropped basically 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, everything that could have gone wrong for Ohio State went wrong in that game. That's the only reason why they lost. And I know you and I have talked about this before. We could have given that LSU team a run for their money.
Yeah, I think people forget that Ohio State team. And man, if I'm wrong, someone please tell me. But the 3 best offenses I've ever seen in my life in college football: LSU, 2020 Bama, 2019 Ohio State. What they were doing that season, man, they were running through teams, running through.
Chase Young is still the most dominant Ohio State football player I've ever seen. Jeremiah Smith has a real chance to jump him on that list for me. But Chase Young, the impact he had was unbelievable.
I call Chase Young in my lifetime. He's the best Ohio State player I've ever seen.
I agree.
I've what he could do by himself. I mean, was it the Wisconsin game?
The Penn State game too. Penn State, he forced 2 fumbles, had 4 sacks. But yeah, the Wisconsin game also.
Oh, wait! Did he sit 2 games?
Yeah, those 2 games were ridiculous.
Yeah. Chase Young. When you talk about Ohio State greatness, he's the guy. And the thing is, the wide receiver unit wasn't all that. But somehow
it was good. But I mean, like you said, I wouldn't call it exceptional. I mean, Garrett Wilson as a freshman was a freak. So he was still pretty darn good. I mean, Olave was good. I mean, Olave was still really good. They had 2 guys who were still young, but were still really good. So that was good.